Okay, you're good to go.
Cool. So I think this one might be a little bit different than some of the other virtual collabs, and it's just kind of an experiment to see, what you all think of it. And so, one of the things that is sort of like both a personal mission and a mission, I think of TPAS, it's really kind of uplift the department and sort of provide skills and techniques that you might not have sort of otherwise. And so what I wanted to do here was, it's the turn of the new year, and say like, okay, a lot of people are doing their planning. What are some ways that we can go and maybe approach planning for the year a little bit different, and sort of use some of the tools that other companies use in the world, and see if that we can apply it to the alumni program. So I put together last night a few slides to kind of walk us through it. It might feel a little geeky at times, but again, I think it's going to kind of challenge us a little bit into something that's kind of new. So let me see if I can share my screen. Tell me if that is working for you all.
Yes.
Cool. So this one's titled Alumni Program Strategic Planning. I'm going to take down. Creating, communicating, and measuring strategic objectives. And so, first one is, go through a short list of, why do we use formalized modeling for strategic planning? And there's a number of them that I've felt are useful. The one that we're going to be looking at today, I've used and in a number of different ways over a little over 20 years, and I found it really useful. I think probably one of the biggest, and when you actually have to do it yourself, most difficult parts of it is really learning how to separate strategic objectives from tactics, because you'll start to write them out and they go, wait a second, that's really kind of more of a to-do. It's not something that is going to be a little have some longevity to it. When we come up with a strategy like this and define strategic objectives, you'll find that they don't really change year to year. You can almost look at them more like themes of things to consider. And once you articulate them, you go, yeah, you know what, I should be, it's probably expected of me to do a lot of these things, but maybe I haven't been. Maybe, I've been so in the weeds of what I've been doing that I haven't even tackled like a whole area of stuff. But at the same time, it makes, once you do this, annual strategic planning a lot easier, because you have a template and you have all the buckets of things that you have to look at. So instead of saying, like sometimes happens at an annual strategic retreat, where they go, all right, we're going to go up on the whiteboard, and what did we do last year that we thought really worked, and what are our ideas for next year? It provides a more organized way of going through and saying, okay, do we have, let's look at this strategic objective. Do we have something planned around that this year? And then really make sure that you've kind of checked off all the boxes, but again, it makes that day a lot more organized. So the next point is leadership communication. And I think one of the things that is always important is communicating to leadership what is going on and why. And I think this provides a way of doing that where it's also kind of a language that they understand. So I think the more that we're speaking the language of the organization, whether it's, and I'll kind of get into later, whether it's for-profit or not-for-profit, there's ways that we can work with them, and then that helps them get on board, and then better sort of understand how they can support you as well. And that kind of gets into the fund allocation that, if you can kind of itemize, where money is going and why, and if you're measuring it, saying, okay, this is working, it makes it easier for them to associate budget and resources with results. And so then the next year, where I think it gives them more confidence, because it's not just sort of like a nebulous, here's a giant budget and they work with our alumni, or they're going to do these like 8 things, and we know this event kind of costs like this. It puts a finer sort of tip on what's going to happen and why. Self-accountability, although it might not seem fun, I've always found it as a useful tool, that if you're referring back to it quarterly, going, am I doing the things that I said I was going to do? And that way you don't find yourself at the end of the year, the next retreat, saying, oh yeah, we're going to do all these things. It's something you kind of check in with as well. So all of this is really, for the purpose of uplifting that role of the alumni program within the organization, and really with the overall sort of purpose of improving, outcomes, which I think we all want. And so, this quote is just kind of like a fun one to put up there, because it's just a to-do list. It's sort of what not to do. I mean, it's going to help you apply your time better. So that way there's probably a lot that all of us do in our day that take a lot of time, but, I think we have to kind of reflect and say, like, is that contributing? And I think that's going to really make sure that we're getting the most out of our day. And then when you look at that over a course of the year, having your hours correctly applied is really going to sort of change the outcomes of any of these strategic objectives that you have. So a little bit of background on what I'm about to show you, and sort of the way that I've used it. So I first got into this a little after it first was published. So what I'm going to show you is strategy mapping and balanced scorecarding. And this was first published in the mid-90s in the Harvard Business Review. I kind of crossed my desk a couple years after that. And what I wanted to do with it is looking at it in terms of my role. And so, and both in an organization and what my organization did. So I was working for a large advertising agency called Arnold Worldwide. I was brought in there to run JetBlue. And what I wanted to do is say, like, ad agencies are really good at being creative, but it was at a time where only a handful of them were really looking at themselves in more business-focused ways. A lot of times we'd come out with a great TV spot or radio campaign, and then everyone high fives and we move on to the next thing. But I think, when I think about it, it's like more the ad agencies like Digitas at the time were becoming more business and results focused. And so I wanted to try to bring Arnold into that, that world a little bit. So while balanced scorecarding is traditionally used, by agencies like, companies like Apple and IBM and stuff like that to organize their strategies across all departments, when you look at everything just through what an ad agency does, not everything applies. So you couldn't just take the books that were written on it and just kind of photocopy, one of the pages out of it and say, here's basically what we need to do. And in the same respect, looking at it through the lens of an alumni program, there's some slight modifications, but I think if you look at the theory of it, it's not that difficult. And what I tried to do was come up with a fairly generic way of applying it to an alumni program, but one where you can start to see how it might be, I don't know, a little more tangible and not just kind of academic as we're going through it. So I talked about Arnold and organizational and departmental ways of using a tool like this, but also, thinking about change management. And this applies both for yourself and, introducing it to an organization. What's likely good about change management in this respect is you're going to have a lot of ownership. If you're not going up to your executive director and saying, oh, here, I have something that I think we should do to organize everything across the program. Of course, that's going to meet with some resistance. But if you're saying, hey, I found this way of approaching the planning that I'm doing, I think all of a sudden, that's going to be a lot easier for you to kind of introduce. You're not going to have as much sort of buy-in necessary, but it's going to be a little bit of a different way of organizing yourself. So you just have to kind of challenge yourself to kind of do it and try it out and see if this is something that works for you. Now, when you look at a strategy map or a balanced scorecard, there's 4 main perspectives that you're going to apply strategic objectives to. So the classic examples are financial, consumer, internal, and learning and growth. And so the idea is that you have strategic objectives around learning and growth, and those help strategic objectives that apply to internal processes that then benefit the consumer, that then contribute financially. I think when you're looking, when I've done this, let's say for a nonprofit, you might actually flip that, and you have your financial at the bottom. The goal, the mission of the organization is not one that's financial. It's one that's mission-based, right? So you might kind of flip it on its head and say, we start at the bottom with financial, and then that ladders, up to sort of their. I don't use the word consumer in this category, but I think constituent is one that I do a lot because it applies to, I think, both families and patient prospects and alumni and referring professionals and a lot of folks. In this world, we might say like, okay, instead of consumer, we're going to have alumni. So it gives you a way of starting to think about things and not just looking, like if you were a for-profit organization, you were doing this for yourself, just doing on things that apply to financials or consumer and financials, but saying like, okay, what are the things that I need to do to support those other perspectives? So, here you talked a little bit about, okay, again, learning and growth, ladders up to internal, ladders up to alumni, and then financial. I mean, I think for a for-profit program, while you might look at your end result as being just serving the alumni, you might get benefit in having that financial perspective being put in it as well, because they're ultimately going to want to know how it contributes to census. And with a healthy program, the alumni should be a major part of really everything, of marketing, but contribution to census is a good reflection of the program, that it's doing the right things if these people want to maintain a relationship with you. But in a for-profit organization, they're not going to be 100% altruistic. So, what you want to do is, if you're looking at, well, if my alumni program is contributing 1/3 of the census, business development is doing 1/3. How come they have whatever a $5 million budget and I'm trying to get bottled water at my events? And I think part of it is business development is talking in the language of leadership in that for-profit environment, but alumni program needs to do that as well. And then they'll start to see that, okay, when we made certain changes, it had this effect. Well, let's do more of that. Let's apply more budget to these areas. So it's really, while I believe in certainly in having just the alumni outcomes be the end result. It's just another way of looking at it to achieve our kind of personal goals by aligning them with the organization's goals. Um, or a nonprofit one, maybe looking at starting at the bottom with financial, and then going up to learning and growth, to internal, and then looking at it, speaking a language that is more mission based might be the language, for them. But it doesn't mean that there aren't situations where the for perspective one, might really help a struggling nonprofit feel more comfortable, because they might be, at the moment, bleeding money, and that's what's on their mind 100% of the day, to keep the mission, going. So it lets them feel good that you considered financial perspectives as well. But you can use, all four of these or three of these, depending on where you're kind of comfortable in setting your goals. So now getting into strategy mapping. So strategy mapping is pretty simple, actually. It's just taking those four perspectives and then plotting out, those objectives. And so what I'm about to show you, I'm not saying this is going to be yours. This is just an example of one. These are objectives that I put quickly together, and just, before we do anything, whether it's a strategy or messaging or anything, it's going to require deep understanding of your situation. And so, when you look at this, you might think to yourself, well, that's wrong. That's not how we do it. Well, it's not meant to say that. Really, I just want to show you this model in a way that applies to alumni program planning, beyond things like event planning. So here, this is more of the for-profit approach here, but at the bottom, looking at learning and growth, and kind of bucketing these things into, so having multiple strategic objectives, and putting them into a bucket of a general theme. So, one, building a culture of excellence. And so what are the things that we need to do in order to do our jobs better? And so what are we doing to improve team ability? What are we doing for ideation fostering? So I mean, I think all of us are pretty familiar with, like, once a year, everyone get together and say, like, hey, what are our ideas? Or you're on a status call and you're kind of put on the spot, and they're saying, does anyone have an idea on how to do this? Yeah, that's one way of doing it, but you can also make it a part of what you do, to have sort of regular ways that people can kind of be prepared to contribute, times to go through and talk about what are maybe new ideas that just weren't conceived, a week ago, a month ago, a year ago. And same thing with team ability. Like, we want to improve ourselves, as individuals, as a team. What are the kinds of things that we need to learn in order to support all the other things that we want to do? Team and partner building. So what are things that we can do to make it a point to improve our communications and our process as a team? These are all kind of things that we all know that we kind of should be doing, but I think by putting it on paper, it's a reminder that, okay, there's always a ways to do things a little bit better, and it allows you to kind of take a step back from the day-to-day work and say, like, have I done anything in a long time to make sure that this process is the most efficient one, or there's not a better way to make sure that, these people over here, we're kind of working with them or connecting better. That's kind of what this is for. It's really that check-in. And then management decision tools. What can we put in place? I used the term category, analytics here, instead of competitive, because I really don't like that term in the world of TPAS. But what are we doing to improve the decision-making tools that we're learning from other programs and people? What are things that we can do to look at what are metrics that we're not capturing now that can make us understand and make better decisions, both ourselves and leadership. And I think it shows a lot to management to let them know that you're thinking of all these things, sort of in addition to the day-to-day. And then also put here, anticipate alumni needs. What are we doing in an ongoing way to look and see, that we are serving them in the best way we can? And that's really also part of the learning and growth. For internal operations, it's not like we're running a warehouse here. So it's really, how can we interact better with other departments and have us help them and them help us? And a lot of times it's, regular check-ins, regular, whether you're in the same office and you're just, leaning over, or you have those status calls. Gina has always done a great job of bringing together, whether it's every week, every 2 weeks, getting, marketing and business development and alumni and admissions and sometimes even clinical together so that we all can talk about the same things and be on the same page. Because there's a lot of times where we can share a really great alumni story, and that can be something that is something we want to get there and could help the next person and be part of the marketing, and say, like, this is the outcome. This is what we do here at our program. Let's really share that. Or it could be that sometimes we're going after, I don't know, we get a bunch of, say we're going after a new set of professional referrals from the military, and we go, admissions, just so you know, you're going to start getting a bunch of these calls. It helps them understand, but it also lets admissions say, hey, we've been hearing this, people don't seem to get this, about us. Again, let's kind of be cohesive, and that works both, when I say the program engagement, meaning more clinical leadership, and, admissions, outreach, marketing as well. There's always more opportunities there. And then some more alumni specific ones, like defining and addressing population needs. So this is going to be highly program specific, but you might say to yourself, you know what, I feel like and this came up on a call recently, where they were saying, we have, these guys who are, just young guys who are just coming out of the program. And then we have these, 60-year-old dudes who have decades under their belt. They're different people, and maybe, we need to, in order to engage them better, look at ways that we might, split them out to make sure that we can listen to them and say, like, just knowing Harmony, they just, have these recovery support groups that are, really giving tools to people in their first year. That might be something you want to consider, that you're not just lumping everyone into sort of the same group. What are things we're doing to increase alumni engagement? How do we channel alumni contribution? So, a lot of times alumni really, are looking for ways to contribute. What are we doing that might be new or different and that should be on our radar, to take that energy and apply it in a way that's aligned with everything else that we're doing. Alumni education, how can we, help them get the tools and information that are going to help them with their long-term recovery. And looking at increasing sobriety outcomes. So if we're measuring this, and there's a number of ways kind of to do it, then we'll know that, okay, if we change the way we're doing alumni education, how did that contribute to outcomes that might be a little bit different? And then from financial, everyone thinks of increasing census, but looking at some of the ways that business development and marketing think of things in terms of decreasing the cost per acquisition, and then also looking at excellent client program matching, and making sure that, okay, it's not that we just want to blindly put people into our program and then their AMA, 3 days later. We want to make sure that, we're putting the right people in the right place. And so how can we do things that, influence length of stay and, getting people to graduate and be well and live, sort of live out their recovery in positive ways. So translating a strategy map into a balanced scorecard is really not more difficult than putting it in an Excel sheet. And so you take, over on the left, you have your 4 different perspectives, and all we did was take those objectives, list them out in a column, and then next to it, have something to measure ourselves by. What is the key performance indicator for that? For sobriety outcomes, it might not just be percent relapse, but average number of days before that situation might happen. Again, these are all going to be unique to you and your program, but I'm just trying to put a handful of ways to take a balanced scorecard or a strategy map and say, how could we apply this in an organized way? So again, I know what I'm supposed to be doing. Everyone else around me knows what they're supposed to be doing. And if I, do all the things I'm supposed to, and it has the desired outcome, how can I get more in terms of resources to grow the alumni program? So I know this is probably more of like a class that's dry and boring than some of these other ones, but I wanted to know, because usually when I'm working on these things, I'm working, at sort of the C level, but I'm really curious, in the same way that I try to take these kind of things and apply it to an advertising agency, if there's, potential value in organizing an alumni program this way, or, is this just so different from the way that you've been thinking about things before that it's going to be a challenging road to go down? That's me opening it up to you guys.
Yeah, I'll bite. I have a little bit of some familiarity with using a scorecard at a previous agency. We would have kind of like weekly and quarterly kind of objectives, and they would be playing into each other, specific to the person. So when I was doing alumni stuff for Red Rock, some of my alumni scorecard, like how many calls did I make this week, how many programs did I work on, or I was also doing some outreach too, so how many community members did I connect with that week? And I think we initially started just kind of blank without having too many objectives, just to get a rough idea of what a reasonable kind of number would be to make, to start basing the scorecard off of. So we would have kind of, and then I think after the first quarter we did it, then started kind of producing some kind of metrics to be like, okay, I'm going to try to make 30 calls this week just to alumni, or I'm going to have 5 touches with community members. So we based it off of kind of experimenting with a little bit, and then developed kind of some more rigid targets to try to hit weekly and quarterly. So I found that really helpful.
Yeah, let me actually, I shouldn't have closed it out because now I want to reference it again. So, yeah, and I think that's really typical of any organization, in any category that I've applied this to, that we can tend to be really good at outlining the strategic objectives or growing into those and thinking about metrics maybe, in a new way than we have historically. I think when we look at the goals, I would say nearly 100% of the time, because they haven't been doing this in the past, we go like, let's get a baseline. I don't even know. Like, we just don't know. And so you get a baseline, and then you can start to set your 2021, 2022, 2023 goals and figure out what your targets are. And what I didn't go into, which I should have, is stuff on the right side here, which is, okay, this is where you apply your initiative. So we have our objectives, but it's here, and this is what we would typically do at a retreat, is just fill in that column. The organizations that are really buttoned up, will look at it with budgets too and say, okay, for these, strategic objectives, I'm going to apply X amount to it. But I would say a lot of the time, especially in this category, that's something that you grow into later. A lot of times people aren't used to thinking in that way, and so that can be more difficult. I would say, just as part of change management overall, you don't have to do all of this, super strictly out of the gates, right? You can do what makes sense to you now, get comfortable with it, and then get more detailed as you go along. And that sounds like what you did.
Something that oh, can I go? I'm going. Something that I really liked, that actually really sparked my attention, Kevin, is when you add up the other graph with the processes, and just really, making sure that the processes that are in place, like, are they actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, and are you actually seeing outcomes from it? And I feel like sometimes, and I'm just like, I was like, I can already think of so many processes that if just a couple things were tweaked and just mastering a process, like how much easier it would be to be able to just have more alumni engagement and just better outcomes in general, just actually taking the time to making sure that it's a well-oiled machine, I guess you could say. Yeah, I just think that that the process part really sparked my attention.
Yeah, because because we have to look at these things and see how they're connected, right? So if we talk a lot about alumni engagement, well, we're not doing alumni engagement for alumni engagement's sake. Alumni engagement has a purpose, even beyond that. So a lot of these things are just all connected. It's just mapping it out and saying, like, okay, how does alumni engagement affect recovery outcomes? How does it affect the fact that when they're close, they know what to do in a situation where someone needs to get help. They feel like they know a good way, they can see a path to it, and know, okay, you know what, I need to contact so-and-so at the program and fold them in this way, and this is how we work. So, all these things, so the way that, you have these, you can draw arrows, between all these things. This, I kind of left it simpler here, so it wasn't a complete mess of arrows, but they really are all, connected. And I think that helps to illustrate that as well. That there's a lot of things we need to be thinking about at any one time. How can we make sure that we're doing it?
Yeah, I really like, especially with this graph, because then for like is to be able to even just refer back to being like, okay, if alumni engagement is not at its greatest, well, then where is it, like, what's happening, from a program engagement on campus, like internal operations, all the way down to the baseline, like our counselors talking about it, our case managers. So it's like,
Right.
Why is it, like from even just the moment they walk into the center to when they walk out, it's not, it's just really, for me, it just goes to show it's not just about me in my position, but really fostering the relationships on campus to really like build that, plant that seed of alumni engagement, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool. I'm ready to go to work.
So Patrick, I know you're eating, but I'm curious about your perspective on it, just to get something that, obviously I'm very familiar with Harmony and those guys. I'm just curious about some of the other programs out there.
Yeah, so I'm fortunate in that I haven't had to do anything convincing when I came on board to this position. From the board and the CEO down, they have just been super supportive and said, hey, what do you want to do? Let's just allocate the resources. So that, you know, trying to figure out a responsible way to do that without, you know, acting like we're sitting on Santa Claus's lap, you know, just asking for the sky's the limit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've just been really blessed with this program and trying to, I mean, the biggest thing has been trying to iron out and see how we can get maximum engagement with a reasonable, you know, investment in time and resources. And so we've done a little bit of a template, and we're kind of taking the rest as it comes throughout the year. So I'm probably going to have more to share on all of this at the next collaborative than I would right at this moment.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, because I'm curious again, because this is like, you know, this is just a model that, you know, I'm familiar with because I've been using it, you know, at different places, you know, throughout my life. But it's not, certainly not the only one. So, you know, just thinking about, okay, for everyone else who's been, you know, planning annually or quarterly or however you do it, what are some of the things that work well? Because I know I don't want to suggest this is the only way, but more that here's maybe something that's, you know, a little bit out of our comfort zone, or, you know, maybe, you know, it's just looking at things from a different direction. But again, I think there's probably, because this is a virtual collaboration, you know, I'm just trying to kind of, you know, see if I can, you know, get exposed to some new things that maybe I haven't been to yet in terms of how do you put together your strategy?
Kevin, it's Stephanie.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, yeah. So, you know, when I came on, I think I'm like a couple other people. They were really excited, and I think they had seen some of the data that said that if we were investing in our alumni program, it was going to take us places. And so I think that's there. But beyond that, nobody had really kind of taken it anywhere else. And, you know, I think in terms of my experience and background, I came from some worlds where these metrics were really important, and it wasn't always one, right? So like in fundraising, obviously you're wanting to meet a financial goal, but there's other metrics like, are you increasing your new donor acquisition rate? Is your attrition rate low? You know, there's other ways and key indicators that you might have a healthy program, and then other ones where maybe you're exceeding your goal, but there's a couple of spots that are really low that, you know, that show that maybe 2 or 3 years down the road you're going to be in bad shape. So what I really like about this is just kind of mapping out what some of those are. I've kind of, you know, we use a lot of our a lot of ours is just straight up engagement at this point, right? Like how many people are coming to our events, how many people are opening our emails, how many people are engaging social media, how many phone calls are we getting in response to questions or whatever it may be. But what I like about the collaborative piece is kind of, as we start to talk about it and kind of having some more, as you listed all those kind of these data points, is starting to track those, we'll start to see what some of those best practices are in this field, right? So if we kind of are all tracking some of those same data points, we can start to see it's just going to be easier long term with a lot of people and a lot of different data points there to start to see where some of those trends are that we may not even know right now, right? That are beyond just a baseline. Like we had 20 times more people who came to our alumni picnic this year, right? Like that's a thing I could say and I could take to people, or that our referent rate is up, which is going to always be a really important one. But seeing some of those ones that may not be on our radar yet as being really important measurables.
Right.
Is great. So I appreciate you listing them all out.
Yeah, and for me also, you know, I mean, I think a lot of times it made me think about it. It's making sure that we're looking at the right metrics, because I think what this sort of framework is good at is saying, okay, this tactic may have done really well, but did it actually contribute in a meaningful way to something else? So, I mean, an example that's in our collective world, but in stuff I hear about all the time, is, okay, you know, we want to have the phone ring X amount of times. That's not really your goal, you know. I mean, it's expensive to field a lot of calls that are completely not appropriate. You know, it's great to have a website with 10 billion visits, but you know, we're able to convert those people into, you know, a life of recovery. Well, no. Okay, well then, yes, you can say that any one of these tactics did really, you know, performed really well, but again, did it contribute to a true objective of the organization? Oh no. Well then, we shouldn't be putting more, you know, in that, or we should look at doing it in a slightly different way. So anyway, when you were saying that and talking about metrics, it made me think of that. But I think it's just worthwhile just kind of inserting in there, as well as how to think about things, because I see a lot of times organizations will make decisions by looking at the tactics and not the objective. So it took me a long time to really be able to think in that way. I know I personally struggled a lot with it, but once it becomes practice, then I feel like that's where you can really contribute in more meaningful ways. Well, anyone else? All right. Lauren, how do you want to close it?
We can just close it. Jen just sent me a message and said that the power went out. And she said she hoped we didn't hear her scream at the computer. So she said she's sorry she had to miss the end. But yeah, if anybody has any more questions, we can keep talking or we can jump off. This is going to be archived and saved in Basecamp in the docs and files section. So you can refer back to it, and I'm sure Kevin can share the slide in there.
Yeah, so we're starting to put more into Basecamp. We're also, you know, you can see some of the stuff on the website. The last virtual collaborative, it's like right on the homepage. You click on that, and it'll take you exactly where you need to go in Basecamp, which, you know, may or may not be easier. And if you think of something later, we can always continue the collaboration there. So, you know, it's great to try to, you know, answer questions or, you know, think things through together on the call. But, you know, I mean, I think we should, you know, all feel sort of invited and welcome to go into Basecamp and shoot over a question at any time.
So as you, if you start to work on this and implement this into your program this year, you can tag Kevin under the virtual in the docs and files, and there's a place for comments and discussion under it. So you can tag Kevin if you have any questions about any of it, or if you want to present your, you know, what you've put together for the group to look at. That would be really cool too.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, and if you have any questions, like if you decide this is something for you and you're staring at it and you need help, just you can ask me in Basecamp, or you can find my phone number somewhere. You can just give me a call and I'll help.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm calling you. Thank you.
I know you have my number.
Awesome.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. It was fun.
Yeah,
And,
thanks for being here.
Yeah, we'll see you on the next one.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.